So we all got the unfortunate news of Scott Hall passing a couple days ago. When I was younger, I didn't really watch WCW like that. I've heard of it and I knew what it was. I knew about Nitro. I don't remember Thunder like that, but I do remember the NWO. That was one of the most popular things from WCW that I did remember and that I did know about. I first got put onto wrestling when I was younger. My uncle, he used to watch WWF. This was prime Undertaker, Lex Luger. Like around that time was when he watched it. But we would only watch WWF and we would hear about WCW. And then not to mention there were so many people going back and forth between promotions. I wanted to actually take the time to look into the NWO and some of the storylines from WCW. I really learned about it around the invasion angle because I was already, that was after Vince had already bought the company. But I want to take it back to when the Monday Night Wars were happening. But definitely, I want to do my due diligence. I learned about the NWO, the Wolfpack, how influential they were. I mean, you see staples like Bullet Club. They used the Too Sweet, Finn Balor, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Adam Cole, AJ Styles, a long list. And even then, I didn't even know how deep that ran from New Japan. So we're going to be checking out the NWO, the complete Wrestling Bios collection. Appreciate Wrestling Bios. This is actually an older video, but it's about 3.5 hours, well, 3 hours and 18 minutes. But we're going to be breaking this down little bit by little bit, just so that way we can find all the intricacies of the NWO. So, again, what's good, YouTube family? My name is Mike. Welcome back to the channel. This is a new channel for me. All wrestling related content, from reactions, education, 2K gameplay. I will get to that eventually. I keep saying that. I know I'm gonna get to it eventually. But yeah, we're gonna be checking out this documentary from Wrestling Bios. So definitely show them some love. Go give them a sub. And we're gonna check this out right now. Oh, so this is a compilation of all their videos together. Okay. Yeah, we'll probably just watch the first part of it. Maybe about 10-15 minutes of it, and then we'll just break it up.
You want a war? You're gonna get one.
The following announcement.
Rest in peace to Scott Hall, man. All I think about is Hogan with the belt, with the guitar. All right, let's see what we got here.
When Scott Hall and Kevin Nash made the jump from the WWF to WCW in 1996, the wrestling world got turned upside down. Razor Ramon and Big Daddy Cool Diesel had been key players in Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation, garnering a huge amount of fan support during the WWF's New Generation movement, and losing two of these big names to the opposition, World Championship Wrestling, was a huge blow to the company. No one could have predicted the impact that Nash and Hall would make in WCW. The two men had worked for World Championship Wrestling previously with limited success, but this time it was very, very different. Billed as the Outsiders, the former Razor Ramon and Diesel would usher in a new era in WCW, kickstarting the company's most groundbreaking and lucrative storyline in history. Today's video looks at the WCW debut of the Outsiders. Razor Ramon was the first guy to reach out and try to get a deal with WCW. Razor had been an
Razor was swagged out with the Cuban links
Federation and
a
a big
toothpick.
fan favorite too, but he wanted to earn more money within wrestling. Scott had asked Vince McMahon if he could get a pay raise or even if he could work some dates in Japan to try and earn a little more on the side. Both ideas were shot down by Vince. Scott Hall was good friends with Diamond Dallas Page, and when DDP learned that Scott's contract was coming up with the World Wrestling Federation and Scott wanted to potentially earn more money, Dallas spoke to Eric Bischoff and a lucrative offer was made to bring Razor Ramon to WCW. Scott Hall said, "I went to Vince McMahon and asked if I could improve my situation with the company. I didn't want to leave, but at that time, Vince felt no. Vince couldn't accommodate me the way I wanted to be accommodated, so I had to do what I felt was best for my family.
As you
and that
should.
was to accept an offer from WCW. It goes back to what Chief Jay Strongbow said to me. In this business, you can make friends or you can make money.
Facts.
I looked at Kevin and I looked at Kid.
That's any business, really.
I'd like the money.
That's any business.
So Scott Hall worked his final WWF date on the 19th of May, 1996.
Oh, shoot.
Putting Triple H over before...
I say, God, how many times did he lose to Triple H? Was that 1, 2, 3, 4? House show. Man, he was definitely putting over Triple H. Jeez.
The infamous curtain call incident in Madison Square Garden.
Oh, yeah.
And someone else who also worked his final match on this very date was Big Daddy Cool Diesel. Diesel had been the WWF champion during most of 1995. The WWF had ran on Diesel power for a little while. Big Daddy Cool had been billed as the leader of the WWF's new generation, and he was a cornerstone of the WWF's movement to get away from superstars of the past during the mid-90s. Kevin was good friends with Scott. He was also good friends with the 1-2-3 Kid, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and when Scott told Kevin how much WCW had offered him, Big Daddy Cool instantly wanted a piece of the pie.
I ain't
Kevin
mad at him.
said, Scott pulled me aside and he said he got an offer to work for Turner. I asked him how much and he told me. I asked him for how many days and he said 150. I said, what? It was huge money and it was guaranteed money, so I got on the phone.
Hey.
Dallas Page was kind of brokering the deal. Eric didn't want to be seen as interfering or talking to us. I went through Dallas and they made an offer to me. So I talked to Vince. I said, this is the offer they gave me. I want to stay. If you can match the offer, I'll stay. Vince McMahon said that both Kevin and Scott were willing to take a little less on their WCW offer, but the WWF would have to guarantee their income. And Vince McMahon didn't offer guaranteed money during this time.
Sorry, y'all. Sound like somebody
Vince would
moving
say
something
he doesn't offer
upstairs.
guarantees, but he does offer opportunities. This wasn't enough to keep Razor Ramon and Diesel on the WWF books, though. The two men decided to
Earl
leave,
Hebner.
and Diesel had his last match in Madison Square Garden also on May 19th, 1996, losing to WWF champion Shawn Michaels in a steel cage match. After the bout, the curtain call incident took place. The Clique broke kayfabe in the middle of the ring to give Scott and Kevin an emotional send-off to WCW. Vince McMahon later admitted that if he knew the impact Kevin Nash and Scott Hall would have on the WCW versus WWF Monday Night War, then he would have offered them enough money to stay put.
That's duh. Hindsight.
WCW executive producer Eric Bischoff had been studying Japanese wrestling during the early to mid-90s, and he had become enamored with the UWF versus New Japan invasion angle throughout 1995 and early 1996. When WCW had secured Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, two of the WWF's biggest stars, Eric felt he could reenact some key aspects of the UWF versus New Japan storyline when it was time for both men to make their television debuts. Eric said,
that's slick.
in the United States, the WWF and WCW were really having a hard time in the live event side of things, while in Japan, they were putting 60, 80, 100,000 people in the Tokyo Dome for big shows. To sum it up, I was over there kind of studying what worked and the differences between the way the product was presented in Japan in comparison to the States. One of the things I noticed, it was much more real there. The storylines, the characters, the action in the ring was more reality based. Here in the United States, it was more about characters and comedy. In Japan, I was watching the intercompany wars, that kind of thing, and that's where the NWO idea started.
So that's where they got the whole like feuding within the company, or this entity and this entity in the company, and they're battling like the invasion angle pretty much, because at that point Vince had already bought WCW and ECW, so it was like the invasion angle. So all of this was inspired by Japan wrestling. That's good to know.
Scott became available, Kevin became available, and that loose idea I had from studying Japan became kind of a reality.
That's tough.
The May 27th.
That's a good way to use some inspiration.
Nitro was remarkable for two things. Firstly, this episode of Nitro was the first 2-hour broadcast of WCW's flagship show, a move here that would eventually force the WWF to also move to a
Tony
2-hour
Schiavone?
format down the road. Secondly, Scott Hall made his debut on this very same episode of Monday Nitro. During a match pitting The Mauler against Steve Dahl, Scott Hall appeared from the audience, making his way down to the ring to interrupt this match. The way this was booked was perfect. Scott Hall got in the ring and said one of the most infamous quotes in wrestling.
I remember seeing this
when he
clip,
said,
but I didn't know this had that
"You
much to
people,
do with it.
You know who I am."
But you don't know why I'm here.
Hey, yo.
Scott went on to ask where Billionaire Ted and the Nacho Man were. These were names the WWF used to mock Ted Turner and Randy Savage, and this is important when looking back at this promo. Scott was using terms that the World Wrestling Federation had been using to poke fun at WCW, so by using these names, Scott himself was also making fun of World Championship Wrestling. Scott said that he can go wherever he wants, whenever he wants, before ending his promo by saying,
You want to go to war? You want a war? You're going to get one.
What's never really talked about here is how Tony Schiavone reacted on commentary.
It was Tony Schiavone.
Promo. Randy Anderson,
That's crazy.
the
I didn't know he
referee
was
from
in
the match that
WCW.
Scott Hall had interrupted, got on the apron and asked Scott to leave. Tony Schiavone could be heard asking Randy what was going on, adding a sense of realism to the segment, and that feeling of this wasn't supposed to happen. Tony then said that it looks like the match had been cancelled before apologising to fans before going off to commercial break. Schiavone doesn't really get credit for this, and I think he definitely helped add a sort of surreal feeling to the whole thing. He helped portray what WCW and Eric Bischoff were trying to present here for sure. Scott Hall wasn't done though. The former Razor Ramon promised us all that he would speak with Eric Bischoff before the end of the night. Bischoff took over on commentary for the second hour of Nitro, and to end the broadcast, Scott Hall
A
approached
denim
Eric
shirt
at
with the
commentary
leather
table.
vest.
Scott told Eric Bischoff that Billionaire Ted should find 3 of his
90s
top
was
guys
different.
to take on Scott Hall and some of his friends, but there was no mentioning of who Scott's friends could be. Scott kept saying things like, "We are going to take over," and while Eric Bischoff would ask Scott who he was referring to, Scott wouldn't give Eric any answers. Hall said the war should take place in the ring, not in the dirt sheets. It should be a match inside the squared circle where it matters. The Nitro broadcast ended with Eric Bischoff and Bobby Heenan looking at each other, totally lost for words. Again, it was played off really well by the broadcast team, and like Tony Schiavone earlier on, I don't think these guys get enough credit for their reactions to Scott Hall's WCW debut and these threats of a takeover.
See, and the more I think about it, we got to remember this was before social media. This was before anything you saw on TV. Once you saw it, that was it. There was no, I mean, maybe if you taped it, but there was no TiVo. There was no internet like that to go back and rewatch this. There was no streaming. So all of this had to be, and this is when, myself included, we thought wrestling was real. Like, we thought like what we saw on TV was these people that really didn't like each other. So I can't imagine seeing somebody that you've seen on WWF television all of a sudden they're in WCW and he's talking about going to war. So you probably, at that point, people were probably thinking like, oh shoot, WCW and WWF is probably going to go to war head to head. But they didn't realize all of this was a work because Kevin Nash, well, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were headed to WCW. So I can't imagine like watching this live, how hyped people were, man. That probably would have been real exciting.
The very next week, Nitro ended the same way when Scott Hall interrupted Eric Bischoff at the commentary desk. Scott said it was Eric Bischoff who started this war, but Hall and his friends are going to finish it. This was in regards to the creation of
Eric
Nitro,
Bischoff
by
was
the
up.
way.
He was
Scott was trying
he was
to
smart.
say that Eric Bischoff fired the first shots by going head to head with Raw, and so Scott and what we could only assume were some of his WWF buddies were going to shut WCW.
Scott Hall was swaggy though.
Hall was implying he was still with the WWF.
Oh,
there,
Chico.
by the way. The key word though is implying. Never once did Scott say he and the WWF were going to take over WCW, but his use of names like Skin Gene and the Nacho Man, along with his threats to bring a war to WCW, and Scott himself sounding exactly like Razor Ramon, all of this was scripted to make it seem like Scott was bringing a fight to WCW from the WWF. Anyway, Sting interrupted Scott Hall here on Nitro while defending the honour of WCW. Scott Hall threw a toothpick at Sting, a classic Razor Ramon move, and Sting replied with a slap to the face.
Ooh.
Enraged, Scott said he has a big surprise next week on Nitro for both Eric Bischoff and the Stinger.
Bro, I know this was hype.
Let's move on to the June 10th WCW Nitro, the episode before the Great American Bash, and an interesting week indeed when talking about the Outsiders. When he was once again interrupted by Scott Hall, Eric Bischoff asked where the big surprise was. Kevin Nash then walked into frame. Big Daddy Cool Diesel had arrived in WCW. Kevin Nash's promo here was great, by the way, but it's remembered for a botch. Kevin Nash said to Eric Bischoff,
"This is where the big boys play, huh? Look at the adjective. Play. We ain't here to play."
He meant verb.
a small hiccup there that didn't go
Whatever.
unnoticed.
Whatever.
But anyway, Kevin said that WCW should get to work dusting off some fossils to get ready for the war. Eric Bischoff then delivered a classic bait and switch. Eric said he has a meeting with WCW executives in Atlanta the following day, and he will see if the higher-ups will allow three guys to bring the fight at the Great American Bash pay-per-view. Of course, the hostile takeover wouldn't happen at the Great American Bash. WCW were going to milk this one a little while longer, but something else happened at the Great American Bash that is very important. The WWF had forced Kevin Nash and Scott Hall legitimately to declare they were not representatives of the World Wrestling Federation. How did the WWF manage to do this?
I'm pretty sure
WCW
legal.
had gotten word that Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation were going to try and sue WCW.
Of course. That's no surprise.
When Scott Hall came over to WCW, his mannerisms, his voice, even the way he walked, it was a carbon copy of his Razor Ramon character from the WWF. Vince McMahon owned both the Razor Ramon and Diesel characters, from the names to the entrance music, the likeness, the rights. The WWF owned everything that was Razor Ramon and Diesel, except Scott Hall and Kevin Nash themselves. So over on WCW here, we have Scott Hall walking out talking with his Cuban Razor Ramon accent, talking about the Nacho Man and Skin Gene in a WWF-esque manner, saying he was going to bring a war to WCW that Eric Bischoff instigated with the debut of Monday Nitro and WCW's rivalry with the WWF. Vince McMahon didn't take too kindly to this. Vince felt that Eric was using the Razor Ramon and Diesel gimmicks that he owned in order to gain an advantage over the WWF by presenting this invasion angle. Of course, Razor Ramon and Diesel were not sent by the WWF at all, but WCW had been implying this whole time that the duo were representing the World Wrestling Federation. To get this settled and to try and stop the whole angle completely, the WWF took WCW to court, accusing Turner's wrestling organization of defamation, slander, trademark infringement, and unfair competition. As part of the complaint, the WWF sought an immediate temporary restraining order against further use of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in ways that could deceive or confuse wrestling fans into thinking the World Wrestling Federation was affiliated with this ongoing WCW storyline. So basically, Vince McMahon was trying to stop the NWO storyline from happening. The case dragged on, but the knee-jerk reaction from Eric Bischoff and WCW was to have Kevin Nash and Scott Hall come out at the Great American Bash pay-per-view and admit to the world that they were actually not representing the World Wrestling Federation.
But okay, my thing is, up to a certain point, yes, name, likeness, all of that, whatever. But they look, you can't own somebody's look. I mean, that's who they were. I mean, you take the name off, you take the costume off, you take the gimmick off, they still were Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Razor Ramon, Diesel. Like, I mean, I get the mannerisms and all of that. But I mean, that's I don't know, that's crazy. But I mean, that's Vince for you.
Point blank, Eric asked both men, "Do you work for the WWF?" and both men said no. Here's another interesting fact. Part of the eventual settlement terms of this very lawsuit would give the WWF the right to bid on WCW properties should they ever be up for liquidation. This means, in a roundabout way, the NWO was the reason why Vince McMahon was able to purchase WCW.
That's nuts. Oh my. So, oh man, hold on, run it back. That's crazy.
No. Here's another interesting fact. Part of the eventual settlement terms of this very lawsuit would give the WWF the right to bid on WCW properties should they ever be up for liquidation. This means, in a roundabout way, the NWO was the reason why Vince McMahon was able to purchase WCW.
Bro, I'm 1,000% sure that Vince's lawyer team saw this and put that in the settlement terms for a long-term play to eventually buy WCW. That when you got money, long money, and a lawyer team that's good, competent, like stuff like this happens, because that's crazy that this whole NWO situation is what led Vince to be able to even put in a bid for WCW. And you know he probably was trying to run them into the ground, which he did, just to be able to buy WCW. That's wow. You talk about chess. That's a crazy chess move.
Anyway, both companies were able to settle out of court. There's much more to this lawsuit and we could literally talk for hours about it, so let's move on. WCW were not allowed to mention that any future NWO members were previously hired by the World Wrestling Federation, leading to...
Actually, you know what? That's a good stopping point. We're going to stop this. We'll make this part one. We'll make this part one, and then we're going to end up going to part two, which is the next part of this, I guess when we get more into the actual forming of the NWO on the next video. But man, I mean, just the beginning, the first 15 minutes of this, I've learned so much about how even WCW was even able to be bought by WWF. But wow, hope you guys are enjoying this. You know, hit that thumbs up button if you guys want to see more of this. I actually would like to make this a nice little series, because this is really informative. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, hit the like button if you liking it so far. Subscribe if you want to see more. And until next time, I will, first of all, I will make sure I close this out right, but I will see y'all back in the ring. Y'all have a good one.